Good morning, dearest church family. I have to start this morning on a very serious note and reveal to you a secret that have been hidden from you for quite a while. My colleagues that have participated in teaching online have not been truly honest with you. I include Mr. Brian Lister, Grant Lister, Matthew Savades, Cody and his whole singing team. And I can no longer keep the secret, and so I've decided this morning to reveal the truth to you. And I'm not going to say anything about it, I'm just going to show you the image. So ladies and gentlemen, I have decided to rebel against the status quo and to be 100% straightforward with you. I've sat here before in board shorts and put up a nice preaching t-shirt, but this morning I said I'm going to put on a t-shirt and be in line and just be truthful, and this is who I am. The lockdown has been interesting. It has been challenging. Lots of people are going through trials. You might be sitting listening to this and you are going through a tough time. I hope that this morning some things will be said that will benefit you on this journey. If you've got your Bible with you, please turn to the book of Genesis chapter 12. We're going to sail through a story of Abraham just quickly, and then we're going to tap into some applicable thoughts that I hope will be really beneficial to us. I've been studying trials since this whole pandemic has started so that I can understand how they work. And so I've started in the Old Testament recently to look at how the ancients, the great people of faith, how they handled difficult situations. And to launch us into the story today, I just want to mention 3 challenges that people often have when it comes to trials. 3 things that people often say that reveals some truths that they believe. The first thing is this: if things go pear-shaped, God has left me. In other words, if things just don't go well in my life, I go through a trial, a difficult time, obviously God is not happy with me, or He just doesn't care about me, but He's not present. God is not present when things are tough. The second challenge is this: if I make a mistake, God will leave me. Obviously, the reason, maybe this goes back to the first challenge, why I'm struggling or going through a difficult time is because I must have made a mistake. I must have done something dumb for God to say, all right, that's it. You've made a mistake, so now I'm going to separate myself from you. The reason why I'm suffering is because I made a really terrible decision. And the idea is that God is punishing us for not thinking through carefully what we do. I don't think that's always the case, whether you choose coffee or tea. And I'm not saying that there are not consequences for making some really ungodly decisions, but not for buying one car instead of the other, buying a Volkswagen instead of a Toyota. And then there's a third challenge. I'm not sure if God will fix my situation or if I must. And there's this play between what must I do and what must I expect God should do. And especially when we're in trials, the big question is, what should I do? How do I solve this? Is it I will sort this out, or is it let God sort this out? I think in both instances, it's maybe debatable, but I think both are wrong. I think in some way we should be saying, I will sort this out with God's help, or God will sort this out with my commitment. And I think we're in partnership with God. Jesus was both God and man. That's why people call Him the God-man. God comes down to earth, takes on the form of man, and He solves humanity's problem. The Bible was written by both God and man. God breathes His Spirit into men who writes down the text. And so the greatest things that God has ever done on the planet has always been a partnership with man. And maybe that's the same way that we should be handling the trials in our lives. Anyways, keep those thoughts in mind as we dive into this text. And let me just go into this text and just reveal some things to set up where I would like to go with the story of Abraham. So let's start with the story of Abraham. God calls him from Ur. We see in Nehemiah 9 verse 7 and Genesis 15 verse 7 that God calls Abraham from Ur. But when you look at Genesis 11 verse 31, it seems like Terah was the one that made the decision in Ur to take his family to the promised land of Canaan. So they went to Haran and they never made it down into Canaan. Well, Terah never made it. He passed away over there. And that was interesting for me because maybe God works through our fathers to get us into places. It seems like God worked through Terah to get his family on the move to Canaan. But then we see in Genesis 12 verse 1 that God calls Abram from Haran when he says to him, leave your family, leave your father's house and go to a land that I will show you. And Abram is extremely obedient. He trusts God. He packs up his bags and he leaves for the promised land of Canaan. And just after that, in chapter 12 verse 2, God makes these promises to Abram. He says, I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. Wow. Imagine God says to you these things. He says, I'm going to bless you. I'm going to give you many children, and I'm going to bless you through your descendants. I'm going to bless the whole world through your descendants. And he's talking there also about Jesus Christ, who would come and save the whole human race. God makes these great promises to Abram, and I think Abram was blown away by that. And not only does he say, I'm going to bless you, but I'm going to make you a blessing to other people. And then God basically takes Abram, well, he says to Abram, now you can go into this land, and I'm going to give this land to you and your children. And so Abram packs his bags and he goes into Canaan and explores the land. I'm not going to read the text, but you can read it. It's in chapter 12, verse 4 to 9. But Abram starts off in the north from where is Haran, and he travels throughout the land. He gets basically to the middle point, okay, of the land, and there he makes a sacrifice to God. I think he was blown away by this land flowing with milk and honey. He makes a sacrifice to God, and God appears to him and says to him, I'm going to give you this whole land, this whole place. I mean, Abram's looking at the mountains. And people say Israel is beautiful. I haven't been there. I would love to go there one day. He looks at the Jordan River. He sees the Sea of Galilee. What a beautiful place. And God says, I'm going to give this land to you and to all of your descendants. And I think Abraham's he's just happy. And he starts walking to the south, and he gets down into the desert of the Negev desert. And by that time, he's seen the whole land. I mean, you couldn't be happier than Abraham at that point in his life. Now let's recap this. God called Abraham. What an honor that God calls you by name. God promises the greatest blessings ever to Abraham. And so Abraham believes God, and he trusts his promises, and he leaves for Canaan. And when he gets there, he travels through the land. He's shown by God what this country looks like, and he's blown away by it. And God tells him that this land will belong to him and his descendants. And Abraham is just enjoying it. He's soaking up the moment. He makes sacrifices to God wherever he goes. I mean, life couldn't be greater, and you couldn't be closer to God than that. Right? It's the beautiful story that everything's going to go well for all of eternity based on the promises of God. But then enters the first trial that Abraham goes through, what we read about in the Bible. And I'm going to read it to us. It's in Genesis 12 from verse 10, directly after this whole scenario I've sketched. Now there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down to Egypt to live there for a while, because the famine was severe. As he was about to enter Egypt, he said to his wife Sarai, I know what a beautiful woman you are. When the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife. Then they will kill me, but will let you live. Say that you are my sister, so that I will be treated well for your sake, and my life will be spared because of you. When Abram came to Egypt, the Egyptians saw that she was a very beautiful woman. And when Pharaoh's officials saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh, and she was taken into his palace. He treated Abram well for her sake, and Abram acquired sheep and cattle, male and female donkeys, men servants and maid servants, and camels. But the Lord inflicted serious diseases on Pharaoh and his household because of Abram's wife Sarai. And so Pharaoh summoned Abram. What have you done to me? He said. Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister, so that I took her to be my wife? Now then, here is your wife. Take her and go. And then Pharaoh gave orders about Abram to his men, and they sent him on his way with his wife and everything that he had. Here we see Abram's trial, and we see that it is multifaceted, one problem leading to the other. 4 things I can pick up. First, there was a drought. The text doesn't say why there was a drought. There's a drought in the whole area. We just see how Abram responds. Here's the man that is blessed. Here's the man that has got God with him, and still he goes into a trial, a drought. And Abraham's such a good example. He doesn't complain. He doesn't ask why. He just tries to make a plan. Then he goes to Egypt, and that's the second trial. Go to a foreign nation where people are different, where people do things different, when they eat differently. He's far away from his father's house. The culture is entirely different. And these people, they're worshipping pagan gods. And then we have a third challenge. He's got a beautiful wife. Who thought that could ever be a trial, to have a beautiful wife? He must hide her and lie about her. You see, and here's the temptation coming in. And you know what's the biggest challenge? Pharaoh takes his wife and makes her his wife. Now men, just think about that for a moment. Is that a trial? I reckon it is. And then fourthly, after Pharaoh finds out he lied about this whole situation, he chases him away. He says, take your stuff and just leave. He came to Egypt because of the famine. We don't know if the famine had ended now, but he takes his stuff and now he's to go into the desert, into the Negev desert, in a world where there's already a drought. Either way, he survived. Now, I want to use the story to ask three questions. Three questions that are related to the three challenges that I posed in the introduction to this talk for today. Three questions I want us to think about. Here's the first one. Who said blessed people will not be burdened? Who said that? Who made that rule? That the moment I go through a difficult time, I'm no longer blessed. Or if I'm blessed, I'm not going to go through a difficult time. I received a letter from a lady not too long ago, and we were just conversing over emails about some of the trials that she was going through in her life. I just want to read you some of the things that she said. She said, I'm trying so hard, but I feel I'm not Christian enough for God to bless me because I'm losing faith and doubting so much. And then in another place she says, but I guess I see what you're saying. That was just a conversation I had with you. I'm doing it and expecting something. Often we think the more godly I am, the better it's going to go with me. And so I do good things so that I can expect good things. And then she says, I just thought that's how it works. Many people think that's how it works. If whatever I ask in His name, He will do it. That's what she quoted in John chapter 14, when Jesus says, if you ask anything in my name, you will have it. And if He can see that I'm trying so hard to connect with Him, why doesn't He just bless me? So at least there's some peace in some situation in my life. The idea here is that I'm obviously not blessed, so God is not for me, He is against me. And there's this misconception, ladies and gentlemen, if God is in my life, I will have no trouble. Say that to Jesus hanging on the cross and imagine what He will answer you. Job wrote in Job chapter 5 verse 7, man is born to troubles as surely as sparks fly upwards. And the same guy, Job, in chapter 14 verse 1 says, man born of woman is of few days and full of trouble. These are the words of a man who was blessed by God and who walked closer to God than any of us. And yet he says, man born of woman, a few days and full of trouble. God present is more guarantee of trouble than God absent. God present is more guarantee of trouble than God absent. Jesus said to His disciples, in this world that you will have trouble. If they hated me, they would hate you. If they called me Beelzebub, imagine what they'll call you. And if you don't know what Beelzebub is, it means the god of the flies. Okay, well that's what Beelzebul means. Jesus uses, the Jews changed the word to bub, Beelzebub, which means the god of poo. That's what they call Jesus. It is the biggest insult. The prince of demons. It's even worse than that. And Jesus is saying, if I'm the leader of the movement, they call me the prince of poo. Imagine what they're going to call you. Repeatedly, the scriptures tells us that we are to follow in the footsteps of Christ, which includes His sufferings as well. Where does this leave us? Well, if you leave Jesus at the first sniff of trouble, then you are not worthy of following Him. If you are following Jesus so that everything can go well, you've got the wrong impression. If you do continually trust Him, even if it is not pleasant, it means your faith and commitment is genuine. God guarantees the destination. He doesn't guarantee a smooth journey. His promise is heaven. His promise is a new character, a new life, eternal life. He promises a life of sense and appreciation, a life of purpose and meaning. Nowhere does He guarantee it to be easy. I found this beautiful writing of a man where he speaks about trials. Listen to what he says. He says, when God puts his own people into the furnace, he keeps his eye on the clock and his hand on the thermostat. He knows how long and how much. Now, if we rebel, he may have to reset the clock, but if we submit, he will not permit us to suffer 1 minute too long. The important thing is that we learn the lesson he wants to teach us and that we bring glory to him alone. We may question why he does it to begin with, or why he doesn't turn down the heat or even turn it off. But our questions are only evidences of unbelief. Job 23 verse 10 is the answer. But he knows the way that I take. When he has tested me, I shall come forth as gold. Gold does not fear the fire. The furnace can only make the gold purer and brighter. Beautiful. Let's look at Abraham. God promised him the world, the greatest blessings ever. And immediately after he saw the land, it struck a drought. Wow, what a beautiful piece of land, God. You promise it to me and boom, then you strike it with drought. What a blessing. Have you ever been there? Have you ever walked so close to God? You've seen his promises and his blessings. You're so pumped up for Christ, and then things go pear-shaped in your life. And the only place that Abraham can go is down to Egypt. Well, it seems like. And so he goes down to Egypt, but he's got a problem. He's got a beautiful wife. And there's the second problem. Lord, you gave me this wife. Wow, and you made her so beautiful. And I took her as my wife, and now my wife has become a real big issue. And that makes the song that you've heard before so biblical, doesn't it? If you want to be happy for the rest of your life, never make a pretty woman your wife. Now, from my personal point of view, get an ugly girl to marry you. I think Abraham sang that song as he's walking into Egypt. And so the best thing that he can do is to say, look, this is my sister. And that went very pear-shaped quickly, because suddenly another man takes his wife into his palace. And then the king finds out about the lie and could probably have killed him because of that. You know, ladies and gentlemen, this is loads of trouble. Abraham gets off the hook quite easily, and he walks away a blessed man. And you know what that shows us? That shows us that we can be blessed through our burdens. Burdens are often blessings in disguise. And so we should not cast them aside. Psalm 34 and verse 19 says, a righteous man may have many troubles, but the Lord delivers him from them all. The question is just when. And that is why we need patience. And we shouldn't mistake God's patience for God's absence. His timing is perfect and his presence is constant. He's always with you. I read some notes of a young man that I married about 3 years ago. I didn't marry him. I married him and his wife. Did the ceremony, because I see people often misinterpret that. And he's trying to write a book. His name is Lungi Madonsela, and he put this quote on Facebook. I don't know if it's his quote or somebody else, but it's quite cool. If the process does not challenge you, it will not change you. If it doesn't test you, it will not transform you. And if it doesn't break you, it will not build you. I think that's beautiful. And so here's the second question. Who said God will not bless our mistakes? Who said that God will not bless our mistakes? It's a common misunderstanding that we have. We think that God does not tolerate mistakes. And when you make a mistake, then God leaves you. That is quite a petty God. Make a mistake, I leave you. You are under pressure in a trial. You lose your temper. You lie about something. And you feel that God has now turned his back on you. Ladies and gentlemen, if it took a mistake for God to leave us, then Jesus died for nothing. Jesus died for our mistakes. He didn't die for our perpetual rebellious sin because of our carnal mindedness, but for our mistakes. Yes, he died for them. If we fall in the trial for temptation, we lose that battle, not God. I'm going to repeat that. If I fall and I make a mistake in a trial, I lose the battle of that trial. I don't lose God. We cannot walk around and think that we can lose God so easily. Lamentations 3 and verse 22, that beautiful text says, his mercy is new every morning. God's mercy is bigger than any mistakes that you have made. And every day he renews it. Let's look at Abraham. In my opinion, Abraham made a mistake going down to Egypt because he trusted in Egypt instead of God. And secondly, he made a mistake in lying about his wife. He knew that going to Egypt would complicate things and put him in a position of temptation to bend the truth, but he still went. And when he got there, he lied. Now, some say he didn't really lie because she was his half sister, the daughter of his father, but not his mother, etc. But here's the question. If it wasn't a lie, then why did Pharaoh think it was a lie? Why? Because he didn't tell the whole truth, the full truth, the faith. Well, the father of the faith faltered in his faith and told the lie. That's the truth of what happens in Genesis chapter 12. Abraham lied. Well, who blames him? Who blames him? I probably would have lied as well if some man was going to take my wife and I'm going to die in the process. But check at what it cost them. It's not fun when another man takes your wife. The text doesn't tell us whether they had intercourse or not, but I think they did. I can't make the judgment, but it says that Pharaoh took her as his wife. Well, what does that mean in the ancient world? And if you're a pagan king worshipping pagan gods, I don't think you've got the moral capacity or the physical, fleshly incapacity to say no to a beautiful woman. But here's the beautiful thing regardless. God blessed Abraham despite his lie. Despite his lie. I'm going to read it to you. Genesis 12 verse 16. I just lost my place here quickly. Genesis 12 verse 16 says, he treated Abraham well for her sake, and Abraham acquired sheep and cattle, male and female donkeys, men servants and maid servants, and camels. And in chapter 13, verse 1 to 2, so Abraham went up from Egypt to the Negev with his wife and everything he had, and Lot went with him. Abraham had become very wealthy in livestock and in silver and gold. Only God made this possible. In a sense, it's like God cleans up your mess sometimes. And I think He does that based on the content of our hearts. And that is comforting, isn't it? As long as I stay committed to Him and humble about my mistakes and acknowledge them, God will lead me to greener pastures. Pharaoh returned Sarai. I think there was a time that Abraham wondered if he would ever get his wife back. Despite his mistakes, God restored his wife to him and He blessed him with more wealth when he left than when he came there. Beautiful. So let's just recap the two questions. The first question is this: who said blessed people will never be burdened? And secondly, who said God will not bless our mistakes? And here's the third question: who said making plans is the opposite of faith? There's a common misunderstanding where people think that let go and let God means I do nothing. That's not really what it means. It means don't carry it alone. The opposite of this dichotomy is often, I will forget about God. And we often wrestle with how much we should be doing and how much we should be trusting. It's difficult sometimes. The principle that I use is found in Matthew chapter 19 verse 26, which implies that there are certain things that God can do and certain things that I can do. And so what must I do? I must do the things that I can do and stop worrying about the things that I can't do. Let God do the things that gods can do. The things that are impossible for me. And you know, it's interesting for me as well, is that often we pray about things that we can stop ourselves. Like, Lord, help me not to lie about this. No, you can just not lie. It's in your power to not lie. Why ask God to do something that you can do? If God commanded obedience, He believes that we can do it without praying about it. All right? In a sense, we should only be praying about the things that we can't do. We can ask for God for strength to do it with ease, but if we can do it, do it. And if we can't do it, let God do it. And so at this moment in the trial that we're going through, there's lots of things we can't change. We can't change the fact that the government has placed us in lockdown. That's something we've got to leave in God's hands. And it doesn't help we fret and scream and cry about it. Leave it in God's hands. But what can you do? Make the most of the situation that you are in. Abraham's plan wasn't perfect. But here's the cool thing. He didn't do nothing. He decided to go to Egypt. He told Pharaoh Sarai was his sister. He made the best plan that he could think of in the moment. And it was probably not the best plan, but he didn't just sit back. God cannot work with people who do nothing. Rather go do something at least. The reason why Abraham's plan in a way succeeded was because he believed God will make it work out for his good. And that is what God did. God desires that we act in faith, not without faith. Sometimes we don't have the best plans. Go ahead anyway. If we go by faith, God will bless what we do. Sometimes we don't even look for any plan. We just think God will sort this out, when in fact He gave us brains to use, and so we've got to use it. Let me conclude. Just 3 points. Gold does not fear the fire, but invites it. Let's not be scared of this fiery trial that we're going through. Let's invite it. Let's pray to God and say, Lord, teach me through this trial. Raise me to the next level. Use me. Make me shiny gold. Because when we get out of this trial, I'm going to be somebody powerful in your kingdom. Secondly, nothing will separate us from the love of Christ. And that includes our mistakes. You can go read the text, Romans chapter 8, verse 31 to 39. Nothing will separate us from the love of Christ, not even our mistakes. Number 3, doing something while trusting someone who is God will always end in success. So if you're going through a trial, do something. Do what you can. And trust God that He will take over where you can't anymore. And the promise is this, it will end in success. I leave Proverbs chapter 3 verse 5 to 6 with you. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him and He will make your paths straight. We love you guys. We pray for you. And may God bless you on this journey. Bye.